So what can you tell me a little bit more about what is birth agnostic?
Absolutely. So it's actually a term I've coined recently, and really it just means that birth happens in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different settings. It has for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and even with all the modern technology and all the medical advancements that have been made that definitely impact how a lot of women give birth, it is still a very sacred and spiritual and primal experience that crosses race, that crosses religious belief, it crosses all these different borders. And so I believe that I can best serve and help hold space for women and other birth givers during that time if I'm not bringing my own prejudices about where they're giving birth or how they're choosing to give birth, and simply just trying to support them and hold them in the way that they feel is best for them. So that's how I approach birth work.
Greetings and welcome to the Elevated Flo Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Flo, aka the Black Rowing Queen. The Elevated Flo Podcast spotlights elite and everyday female athletes, mostly over 40, sharing how they elevate their game and their flow in sports, wellness, work, and life. These are powerful stories of strength, resilience, wisdom, and inspiration to help women stay active, age strong, and pass the torch to the next generation. Today, I have a very special guest with me. Please help me welcome Miss Carmen Johnson.
Thank you, Flo. I'm happy to be here.
I am so happy that you are here, and I am looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Yes, me too.
Carmen Johnson is a birth and postpartum doula, childbirth educator, and placenta encapsulator serving the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. She has been dedicated to birth work for over a decade with a deep commitment to advancing equity and restoring humanity with maternity care in the United States. This is an interest that grew from her own motherhood journey. Beyond her professional work, Carmen values time spent with her family. She enjoys brunch and comedy shows with her husband, and she goes on solo or girlfriend movie dates, and she loves mommy and daughter dates to Six Flags with her 2 daughters. Welcome, Carmen,
Thank
to
you,
the Elevated
Flo.
Flo Podcast.
Whoop whoop. Happy to be here.
Yes. All right. So we're just going to jump right on in because,
Let's get
when I
into
first
it.
heard this, I was like, excuse me, what is a placenta encapsulator? Okay, so we're going to start with how do you describe yourself and what it is that you do?
Well, I guess in the simplest terms, I'm a birth agnostic, birth and postpartum doula who believes in the full spectrum, so to speak, approach to birth work. So that incorporates the education piece as well as the care postpartum, where the placenta aspect comes in. But yeah, I want to care for and nurture the whole mama, as I call it. So Mama Nurture is the name of my practice. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, but not really. So what can you tell me a little bit more about what is birth agnostic?
Absolutely. So it's actually a term I've coined recently, and really it just means that birth happens in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different settings. It has for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and even with all the modern technology and all the medical advancements that have been made that definitely impact how a lot of women give birth, it is still a very sacred and spiritual and primal experience that crosses race, that crosses religious belief, it crosses all these different borders. And so I believe that I can best serve and help hold space for women and other birth givers during that time if I'm not bringing my own prejudices about where they're giving birth or how they're choosing to give birth, and simply just trying to support them and hold them in the way that they feel is best for them. So That's
Okay.
how I approach birth work.
Okay. That makes sense because you hear agnostic and it's usually related to religion. So
Mhm,
thank you for
mhm,
that
mhm.
explanation. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now let's get into this placenta encapsulator because, I was like, what? I have never heard that before. Talk a little bit more about that and exactly what that is in the process.
Absolutely. So, for those in the audience who may not really be familiar with like the process of pregnancy and birth, the placenta is an organ that is actually grown during the pregnancy period. And it's specifically for the purpose of sustaining the growing baby inside the mom. So it's transporting nutrients from mom's bloodstream to the baby safely. And then it's helping also filter waste out that baby's having out to mom. And basically it's
Excuse
the
me.
life force. It's the life supporting force for the baby while they're in utero. What it also is responsible for is generating and maintaining the primary pregnancy hormones that actually sustain the pregnancy. So all those hormones are what's responsible for all those big changes that are happening physically to mom, but also emotionally. A lot of people like to think of pregnant women as super emotional and
Hmm.
maybe it's a very sensitive time. But there's actually a biological reason for that. It's because her body is literally being flooded with all of these various different hormones that are all serving different purposes that are all going towards sustaining and making this be a healthy, lasting pregnancy. So during birth, kind of the last phase of the birth process is the expulsion of the placenta from the uterus. And with that expulsion goes all those hormones that have been making mom, sustaining the pregnancy, but also, kind of contributing to the emotional state and the mental state of mom's, well-being during pregnancy. So a lot of women and other birthing people after birth experience kind of a dip in their feelings. Some people might hear it called the baby blues. But that's essentially just your body is now experiencing this big hormonal drop after pregnancy. And again, it's causing a big range of different emotions for you to experience as your body kind of regulates itself back out. So in a lot of cultures, and you even see this in the animal kingdom, a lot of mammals will consume their own placentas and like the other birthing artifacts after birth. It might have different purposes. There are thoughts that, that's actually part of a way to keep predators away if you don't have the evidence of
Mm,
birth. But it's also in the animal kingdom, they experience that same hormonal shift during pregnancy. So it's thought that potentially that's nature's way of kind of conserving that energy and bringing that back into themselves, as
interesting.
fuel and to help them also re regulate. So it's not unseen outside of humans. But there are other cultures where it's more normalized. They might, prepare the placenta in different ways, or even just having like ceremonies to kind of honor the work that the placenta did and to kind of, close out that chapter. But what we're discovering is that it can also play a big role in helping women re-regulate after giving birth. So
Okay.
by dehydrating and preparing the placenta a specific way, there's like a whole big process that goes into it. But ultimately, you end up with it in this powdered form that can then be encapsulated and then ingested, just like you take a multivitamin or something. It's packed full of nutrients, iron, other different vitamins and minerals, but also some of those hormones that were sustaining the pregnancy can also go back into mom to help sustain her well-being while her body reacclimates and kind of adjusts to life postpartum.
Now, how did you find out about that as even an option for you to
I
start
actually
doing that
I
work?
I did it with my old girls. So I did it myself when I was pregnant with my oldest and decided I had both of my girls with midwives, one at home, one in a birth center. And it was something that my midwife actually brought up to me
Mm,
because I have a history of, well, I actually still live with depression and anxiety. So there was some concern for me as I'm approaching the birth phase and understanding like all the different emotional things. I was just concerned about how that might impact me with already having a history
okay.
of these conditions, how that would then maybe be exacerbated postpartum. So it was a little bit of me trying to be proactive and
Hmm.
find more holistic ways to get ahead of that curve. Not that I'm anti, medication, like do your thing. I take the meds too, but I figure this is
That's
something that
definitely
has
holistic, though.
Yeah, yeah, it's already served my body well, like, why not give that back to myself? So,
Right.
yeah, found a practitioner, in Austin. We were living in Austin at the time, and she was amazing. She came to my house and prepared it, and so I got to, like, see the whole process, which that was kinda cool to just kinda and also have her there with me, and I could just ask her questions and stuff, but anywho, yeah, I did it. I felt that it worked well for me personally. So I just like to offer that as an option to other women who might be in a similar place or just open to again holistic ways of supporting their well being postpartum.
Now, how do you think, because you talked about baby blues,
Hmm.
does that help with, is that similar to, and with that taking that placenta, would that help with postpartum depression or is that different?
So the baby blues are more of just like the results, kind of I don't want to say a byproduct, but it's an occurrence specifically due to the process of giving birth and having that like physical hormonal drop. So it's a little
Right.
bit more non-discriminatory in that like eight out of 10 women will probably experience women who give birth and people who give birth will probably experience some form of baby blues.
Okay.
Some may just be, a little bit more weepy. It could also be like, emotional highs. You're feeling a
Mm,
lot more just excited, but that could be followed by, big drops where suddenly you're just, feeling just super tender, I guess is a period of real tenderness. So it's kind of a spectrum for the baby blues. Whereas postpartum depression is an actual mental illness.
mm.
And it can be something where if you already have a history of it, it's possible that it can be increased during pregnancy, or there are some women or people who develop it after. So they may not have necessarily had a history of it, but something in how their body responded to those hormonal shifts, and maybe it could be something in their environment if there's traumas or things that they might have experienced in the perinatal period. A lot of those things can drive to these disorders after pregnancy. So while the two are both kind of like, have that emotional, they impact you emotionally and mentally. Postpartum depression itself is an actual mental disorder that,
Gotcha.
a lot of time needs the care of a psychotherapist or something of that nature. Whereas baby blues, just maybe talk therapy can help with that, but other, more holistic approaches might help you get over that hump. And it's usually more short-lived. It's usually only lasts for a few weeks after birth, whereas you could live with postpartum depression for a while
Okay.
after. Yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you for making that distinction. So,
sure.
we're talking about being an athlete, being active.
Hmm.
And I talk to women all the time and talk about when you are active, when you have lean muscle, when you walk and just being active, how it
Hmm.
improves everything in your life. So how
Hmm.
would you say that you being active helped you in through your pregnancy, and kind of
Hmm.
talk a little bit about when you started being active, what kind of sports you played, and
Hmm.
what level of activity you continued to do while you were pregnant?
Sure, absolutely. So I was kind of telling you before we hopped on that growing up, I never really saw myself or thought of myself as an athlete. I've always been naturally athletically inclined. All growing up, people always assumed I was either running track or playing basketball. I'm not that tall. I'm only 5'7". So the basketball one was kind of, but I've always had a very athletic build, really go to the sports path. That was my brother and my two brothers, whereas I was more of the choir nerd. But kind of growing up around, athletic brothers and growing up with two boys, we naturally were like, very competitive, very athletic in nature. But it actually wasn't until I got to college that I became, at least temporarily, an actual athlete. And I was on the Texas women's rowing team for just a semester, but it was a dope semester. I got to do two different regattas, which was awesome. But the way that even came about was super random. So it was the first like week of fall semester, and I'm walking from my dorm. This is at the University of Texas, and I'm crossing the street, and there's this little short, a blonde lady who's standing at the corner and just like, talking to people. And I cross over and she stops me as I'm crossing the street and she goes almost verbatim. She goes, "Hi, my name is Caroline." you've got really broad shoulders. Actually, she goes, you have really awesome broad shoulders. You should come row for me. And, and I was just like, okay. So I took her flyer, and at the moment it was just like, that's random. Like, I'm on the way to class, and I was like, and rowing, like I had a concept of what it was, like the sport, not just rowing a boat, but the actual sport. But it just wasn't something that was in the realm of like, yeah, I'm interested in that. So her calling me out was just like, okay, why not? Like
Right.
that tends to be my approach to most things. Like, I'm a pretty adventurous person. So if it sounds cool and interesting and it's like accessible, it's like, okay, why not? Let's give it a shot. So I went to the info session, which was a few days later, and got to meet some of the rowers and just hear them talk more about it and what it was like and a day in the life sort of thing. And I was just hooked. I was so pumped. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I've always loved the water. Being on the water in any capacity has been something that has just drawn me since before I can remember. And I was hooked just hearing about it. And so there was going to be like a tryout process because this was to row for like the rowing team, like the NCAA team. So it was crazy to like have that opportunity to just like walk on as like an NCAA athlete into
Right,
this,
right.
which was crazy. But yeah, and I went from like zero, which zero being like fairly active, walking it like I can move. I was actually in show choir at the time because again, choir nerd. So I'm used to like dancing and moving and being active. I went from that to like full on athlete, like
Right.
3 to 4 days a week, 5 in the morning workouts, followed by like afternoon, evening, weekend practices. Like, I mean, just went all in. And it was kind of crazy. It was funny because I grew up with my brother and my cousin. Again, they played organized sports all through middle, high school, and even into college. So I grew up seeing their level of discipline for them to,
Mhm.
and they excelled. They both excelled at their sports, football and basketball. So like I grew up with them having to have that level of discipline and the two a days and all that stuff. So for me to just suddenly be like
Right.
catapulted into that world was like, what is happening? So it was both fun, but like at the time, by far one of the most challenging things I had
Mm.
done. Like the level of discipline that it takes, and I'm preaching to the choir right now, but the level of discipline and commitment was not like anything I'd experienced up to that point in life. And I learned so much about myself and what I could do, I could accomplish if I just like gave something my all and just kept pushing myself, just a little bit further than what I think I could do. And then I succeed. And it's like,
Right.
oh, okay, all right, what's next? What's next? And unfortunately, it was short lived because the choir nerd in me won out. And eventually, like the practice schedules, as we got further into the season, got a lot more rigorous. And it got to where like I couldn't do both. I had to choose. I'd been kind of making it work throughout the first half. But that remains one of my biggest like, man, what if like
Mm.
things in life. Even my coach was like, "Oh, Carmen, like it was so hard because
I
she
know, I was
she
gonna say, how did they let you go? 'Cause
she tried. She pulled out all the stops because I did get pretty good at it. I just
Mhm.
needed to build more muscle because the strength, the power that's needed
Right.
to move that boat. I just need again started from scratch. So I kind of had to build, all of that. And
Right.
over the winter break, I got there. Then I got back. It was like, so Caroline, but she was heartbroken
I know she
and
was.
I would actually run into her all the time on campus. And towards like my last couple of years, Texas women's took home, I think, their first NCAA championship in a while. They've won multiple since then,
Right,
but they
right,
got
right.
one while I was on. And I remember running into her after they won, and I was like, Caroline, yo, that's congratulations. And she's like, it's yours too. You're part of the team. So that felt pretty good.
That's so cool.
Still, but yeah, that's so yeah, that kind of while that was my last I guess organized sport, it definitely like opened up a love for like so after that I took up kayaking pretty regularly, like just to be out on the water. Because
Right.
at the time rowing
Awesome.
wasn't as accessible a hobby for me then, but like
Right.
kayaking was a little bit more accessible. So yeah, I kind of just I've definitely kept the lessons around like determination and grit and just like buckling down and getting it done and
Yes.
pushing myself and having that discipline. That's definitely carried forward to now through like post college careers and now career changes and other career changes, to parenthood and now building a business from scratch. So yeah.
That is so awesome, and I love that, and I know that's how we connected, with the Black
Yeah.
Women's Who, and you
Yeah.
said, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're the rower." Yeah, it
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. The rest is history.
So, what level of activity did you keep have you kept up? You said you do kayaking, but what
Mhm.
kind of
Mhm.
what did you get your degree in? What did you get your degree in?
Yeah. So, Jane of all trades, I actually got my degree in Spanish language and literature. So I am bilingual
Interesting.
in English and
Okay.
Spanish. Yes. And but that I didn't go into a career with it. Like I went and I worked for Bank of America out of school and then transitioned into tech. So I worked for a few software companies and 13-year tech career through various things. I always kind of maintained this on and off relationship with my level of activity and activeness. Like I've always been a fairly active person. Living in Austin and having Town Lake like right there accessible. Like kayaking, hanging out on the trail,
Right, right.
being out in nature was a regular thing. And then I'd have, a period of a year or two where I'd suddenly become like a gym rat or I was really into Zumba for like 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like various things. I like variety
Right.
in like how I stay active and in my active life. So just kind of keeping it interesting, mixing it up. But lately, I've been much more gym focused. So I go 5 days a week, functional training, weight training mixed in there. We do some cycling with our bikes just around the neighborhood and take the girls out sometimes. I've recently taken up roller skating and I'm really
Ah,
enjoying that. So I'm looking forward to that becoming more of a thing. I'm not that great at it right now, but like again, discipline and
outside or
consistency,
in a rink?
both. We have a
Okay.
rink right around the corner from us, but I'll do it like up the driveway or down the street. It's kind of a rocky street, so more so in the driveway. But I prefer the rink because it's a little
Are
bit
you
more
like
beginner
padded,
friendly.
elbow pads, knee
No, no,
pads,
I'm just
helmet?
like again, I'm just like all in. Just go
No
for it.
way. Are you
No,
serious?
I've only fallen. I must again. But I have good core strength because I've been working out, so I can keep myself upright at least.
Well, I'm gonna say that probably has something to do with you not quite being 40 yet. Cause girl, it ain't about, I mean, just sometimes your body
Possibly.
just does some things that you don't want it to do.
Possibly. I
I'm
will
like, I have
concede
some
that
roller
point.
skates, and I said the same thing. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna skate." I put those skates on 2 times. Once in the house when I had hardwood floors, and then I went outside and I was like, "You know what? I think I need to get a
Okay.
helmet and some knee pads, elbow pads, and all of that." And then shortly after that, one of my clients went skating with one of her friends, and the woman, she was like in her late 50s, early 60s, and she fell and broke something, and it took forever for her to heal and
No.
all this. And I was just like, yeah, I can't
Yep, I'm
chance
good.
that.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
I can see that. Yep,
Well,
yep.
have fun, be careful.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, what are some things you said some of the lessons that you learned being on the rowing team just for a semester? That is so powerful. What are some lessons that you learned being on the rowing team that help you get through college and then post college? You said you were a Spanish major, but you went into
Mhm.
tech. So
Yes.
how did those lessons get you through college? Let's
Yes.
start there because I keep asking these double questions and then okay. So how did
You're
those
good.
lessons get you through college?
This is kind of the consistent theme from college through college. So 2 decades later, because that was 2006 when I was on the rowing team. And now two
Okay.
decades later, that consistent theme, that little thing that I learned from rowing that carried me through is I can do hard things.
Well,
And
that's one of my favorites.
that
Yes.
sounds so simple, but I guess and it's not to say like I had like a cushy upbringing, far from it actually, very very far from it, but that was hard in a different way. That was hard
Right.
in the like, circumstances out of your control and you
Right.
kind of just weather it because you have to, really have a choice. This was more of I have a choice of if I want to do this hard thing that's going to help me grow. And it
Right.
might be scary and it might be pushing me in ways that I'm uncomfortable with. I could shy away from that and go an easier route and do something that's more familiar, more in my comfort zone.
Right.
Or I could try the hard thing and then do the hard thing and come out better for it. Like, oh wow, like I could do this hard thing and like I grew. I got
Right.
to
Right.
broaden my horizons in a way that I wouldn't have if I'd chosen an easier route. That definitely got me through college. I embraced fully the college experience is what I will say about that. So
Okay.
and that also means like you got to be on those academics, especially at a school like the University of Texas. Like you can't, they're not just handing out degrees. You got to work for those. At least I did have to work for mine. So I can get through hard things. I can get through this hard Spanish course load. Those second, third, and fourth year Spanish classes were not easy, but I did it and I excelled at it. After college, I kind of went into banking because it was accessible at the time. My husband and I like just gotten married. We actually got married while I was working at the bank. And we were like poor, broke, struggling, barely making it post grad school, working on a startup. And so just trying to get our start in life together
Mm-hmm.
while also building a career. But I learned pretty quickly that my future wasn't really in working with the bank or in that aspect of corporate America. And at the time, my husband had already been working for tech companies for some local like startups in Austin for about a year or so when I was going through my, I'd been with the bank for almost 3 years after
Mm-hmm.
college and was just, I don't know, having a crisis of like, what do I do next? What do I do with my life and my
Right.
24-year-old life? What do I do? I don't know. And it's like, you should try tech. You have a good knack for it. Working in the bank in the consumer side, I was people facing all day. He was like, you would kill in like a customer relations type role at a tech
Okay.
company. And that's what I went and did. I started working at a small startup that was like small. I think at the time there was like less than 30 people at the company, but it was a great company, great boss, great environment for me to like get in and contribute. It was it was a small company, but you had to be pretty high performing. It was like really high growth period. So I got to kind of come in there on the ground floor, so to speak, and help build
Mm-hmm.
out a lot of the processes and things that they were building. I built out my own role, so to speak.
Okay.
And yeah, again, that you can do hard things when we're figuring it out. And I'm sitting in this room full of, older, middle aged, white dudes. They're great. They were wonderful people to learn from, but like, let's call a spade a spade. It was a room full of white dudes trying to figure out, what do we do next and having my opinion matter.
Mm.
It's like, I would not have envisioned myself in that space on the one hand. But on the other hand, it was like, of course I belong in this space. Like, I'm awesome and I have a great
Right.
perspective to bring to the
Right.
table. And the proof was in the
Absolutely.
pudding. It showed in the results. So while I was with that company, I got pregnant with my oldest daughter. And I guess I'd been there almost 3 years, 3 years, 4 years. And then I got pregnant with my oldest daughter. And then I went on maternity leave after I had her. And I couldn't go back because I just needed to be home with my baby. So a 12-week maternity leave turned into a 16-week maternity leave that turned into yeah. So I'm just gonna resign and stay home with my child. And so yeah, that was 2017, and I was home with her for almost a year and a half, and then I was like, I need to do something. I love being home with my baby, but I need to work. I need to contribute outside of
Right.
mothering a little human. Because, that's always been me. Like I have multiple sides to who I am, and mommy was great. I got to like dive head first into that. And it's like, all right, it's time for the next adventure. So
So before you
I
move on to that next adventure,
yeah. Yes.
you said that you were working for a small tech company.
Uh-huh.
You actually helped them build out the systems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and you said that it was a great environment. What
Mm-hmm.
is something that you helped build out that could have possibly maybe get you to come back after you had your baby? But if not, what are some things that companies can have in place that makes people feel like the company cares about their mental, physical well-being?
Yeah. Honestly, I could say like, well, the culture matters. And by that, it's, how welcoming and supportive are they of the whole person, right? Like, there is the concept of like, professionalism in the workplace. So ensuring a workspace that is welcoming, supportive, embracing of the full person beyond just the employee and what they can put out. If
Mhm.
people feel like they're coming to work and contributing to
Right,
something that their skills, their talents are helping build, grow, contribute, achieve something
right.
where they're actively appreciated, not just, things are going great. Yay. If things are, the company's not doing so great, boo, work harder, work better. Like they actually appreciate the contributions. That just keeps the overall, it keeps you interested. It keeps you wanting to be there. But more than that, people need to be bought in. They need to be bought into what they're doing and they need to believe in it. And a really big thing, and this is something that I actually learned from my husband, and it's carried me and both of us through life, is like ask for equity. You want a piece of the pie that you are
Mm,
contributing to and building. This is a lot easier in a startup and in a
right,
smaller company. Like it's yeah, that and that's kind of like par for the course now. If you know anything about like the tech world and software companies, especially startups, like an equity package is kind of like table stakes at this point. But it's true that like somebody actually being able to contribute to participate in getting a piece of the pie may not be the biggest piece, but it's something. You're
right,
working for something that's yours. So what you put in directly contributes to what you get out. What the company gets out feeds back into what you get out. So offer your employees equity, like offer enticing employment packages that make people want to be there, and then create an environment that makes them want to stay, make them feel heard, give them opportunities to showcase their skills, to grow beyond just whatever their role
mhm,
entails. That is honestly the way that I grew across all of my roles. Every company that I worked in, I had one, if not two or three promotions throughout my tenure there. And most of
okay,
them were opportunities I sought out that were made available internally. It was having
okay,
me getting the opportunity while I'm working in a role to explore other things and having kind of an open workplace where you don't feel like you have to hide if you're interested in something else. Again, nurturing the whole employee.
right,
You
right,
might have
right,
been hired in for a certain role, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your talents and your ambition and your desires won't have you wanting to, explore or grow other things within the company. You shouldn't have to leave to go and find the next thing. If it's a good
right,
environment, they should make it possible for the internal people to grow with the company. So I was lucky to work with companies like that gave me opportunities. But then I also had the discipline and the go getter mentality to go after them, or to
right.
make opportunities where there might not have been any. So yeah, it was a crazy ride, an awesome ride. Yeah.
If you've ever led high performers and wondered why they still burn out, disengage, or plateau, this is for you. Former athletes don't struggle at work because they lack discipline. They struggle because the coaching systems that once supported their growth are gone. I work with organizations that want more than output. They want sustainable performance, retention, and leaders who thrive. Because employee wellness, well being, development, and feedback aren't perks, they're core priorities. If you're ready to build a coaching culture that supports the whole person in work and at life, let's talk. Click the link in the description to learn more about corporate wellness and leadership development opportunities. Now let's get back to the episode. So then you had the mother role and you said, "Okay, I'm not going back." So when did you decide that you wanted to start your own business?
Wow, that honestly, that has been a long journey. Probably ever since that first transition away from the bank after college, when I first transitioned into tech. There was a period where I entertained kind of starting my own business. At the time, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My husband's always had an entrepreneurial mindset. Like by the time I met him, he'd already come up with like 2 or 3 different startup ideas. He was actively working on one when we met, when we first got married and graduated. He was building his startup. So he's always kind of had that. And for me, it was like, I mean, it could be cool, but I didn't have anything that I wanted to pursue necessarily. So
Right.
but it's always been something that's been in my head. And we've also had a desire in some way to try and build some sort of venture together. We had never quite landed on what exactly. So it was always like, finding opportunities to build my own thing or, for us to pursue something together. And it was actually the beginning of last year, beginning of 2025, so almost a year ago now, where I was at another crossroads in my career. I'd been working with my last tech company for 6.5 years. I'd had
Mm.
3 different roles. I was kind of working in a new area. I was a product manager for some of our internal products, customer facing, but more so the gears and the underpinnings of the software platform. And that was probably after that rowing experience in college. This was probably my second most challenging mentally, physically, like pushing myself, to bounds I didn't think, because I went from customer facing, primary relationship management. I've got a certain portfolio of clients that I'm responsible for nurturing and growing, bringing in more revenue, growing what we have, retention, relationship building management. And I went from that to a highly technical interfacing with software engineers and other product
Mm.
managers and C-suite and kind of the intermediary behind all of this, bringing these products to life, like big pieces of the company. And I'm in like weekly meetings with the CEO at some point. So it's like just so many different parts of different skill sets and different being able to speak internally to different audiences,
Mhm.
communicate effectively, and also like deliver results. It's a very
Right.
results oriented role, high growth, all the buzzwords. And it pushed me. It actually at one point pushed me beyond my limit. I had to take a medical leave of absence because it was just I was not this was a point in life where I was not creating balance is not the word that I want, but harmony.
Harmony. Yeah.
I was very heavy into the work, the results, the do, and I wasn't taking care of myself. Was not working out. I was not staying active. I was not taking care of my mental health. And so I burned myself out. It was partially the environment, but it was also me not prioritizing that harmony within myself. So I had to take a period to just like reset. And it was during that reset that I first had the inkling of, I think I'm ready to transition into the next thing. And I didn't know I didn't actually think that next thing was to go work for some other company, which
Mhm.
was the first time in a while that was kind of not the next step. It was no, like what do I want to do? Like what do I want to be? How do I want to apply myself? And so that happened in 2024, like early
Mm.
2024. So I went back to work after the leave was over. And it was good. It was a time where I got to decompress. I started working out regularly. I started back meditating during that break. I went on a couple of like soul searching trips with my sister-in-law and like came back a new woman. But and even going back to work and things being well, me finding again more of that harmony, not going back into that same toxic environment, creating more space, establishing boundaries where I understand that, we need to deliver results. And I also need to make space for my family and for all this time. So, and having a company that was very supportive of that helped me come back healthier
So
with a
they were
better mindset.
supportive of it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It was such
Awesome.
a,
Awesome.
it was, when I let them know I needed to take the leave, it was very much so whatever you need, you let us know how we can
Okay.
support you. There was zero pushback.
Good,
When
good,
it was
good.
time to come back, they were very accommodating for the workload that I wanted to come back to. It was I can't say enough about
Okay.
my
So do you
experience
feel
working
like
with
you
them.
put some of that pressure on yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of it was self-inflicted. A lot of it was the environment and just the expectations. It was a really crucial time for the company. So it was kind of like, everyone was again, I've always worked and put myself in very high performing environments. So I
Mhm.
want to work for companies that are growing, that
Right, right.
are leaders in their space, and with that level of achievement comes like expectations of the employees. You just have to perform at a higher level. So for me, I wanted to be the best of the best in a group of the best. So I had very high expectations of myself to the point of
Right.
like pushing myself and not again just prioritizing keeping um harmonizing all sides of myself.
So how do you find that harmony now when you are in like a high performing situation
Yeah.
or
Um,
environment?
yeah. I'm really big on grounding. I'm big on spiritualism and like all the things. So I wear grounding crystals, like actually grounding myself. I'm big on meditation. Just on the flow, on the fly, like not necessarily just sitting in a space and removing all distractions, but like actually just I meditate in the car when I'm driving. I meditate listening to music, like just going within myself and grounding, really centering myself, I guess, within me.
Mhm.
It may sound weird coming out, but I tend to live in the what if and kind of in my head a lot and always
Okay.
planning, always extrapolating. And so for me to be able to not let myself get too much in my head if there's a really like stressful or trying environment, breathing. Like I literally have to remind myself, like, just come back to you. Like stop being out there and come more inward. And that kind of helps me to see whatever the situation is from a more I guess clear
Yeah.
perspective, less like
Yeah.
there's less of the noise and just
Mhm.
see it for what it is. So that's really the big thing. And so even with my doula work, like I was just telling you before that like my work is starting to pick up. I'm starting to get more word of mouth. People are starting to learn more about me. So like the work's coming in. So it's just been a busy week. And I could kind of feel myself, after a couple of days of it, just starting to feel really like, man, I'm tired because it's going from dropping my kids off at school in the morning to rushing straight to doula visits, then picking my kids up from school and shifting back into mommy mode to sleeping and then doing it all over again.
Right.
So right before this, I was sitting in the living room and I was with my daughters. We were actually tuning a new kalimba instrument that my daughter
Mm.
just got. Super random. The tuning process is really fun on those, by the way. And that was kind of a meditation for me. Like literally just
Okay.
sitting there tuning this little instrument, which just gave me to focus on something that quieted and calmed my mind so I
Mm.
could reset from that
Right.
long, tiring day to now sit here with you and have this discussion. So,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you know
yeah.
what? As I was reflecting on just the thought of our previous conversation and planning for this conversation today, I was thinking about the work that you do
Hmm.
and thinking about the women that you work with. And I never thought about it like this to this extent that women, mothers that have had children, I believe they have like a lot of patience. And if they really, really think about the time that it takes to actually develop a human being before they birth it, if you can kind of go back to that time, like you can reflect back to being on the rowing team, but if women can kind of go back to that time where they are developing this human in their body, they have to be very patient because it's like no matter what you do, you have to go through these
Yep. Yes,
trimesters
trimesters. Yep.
until
You are
you
not in
get
control.
to
Yep.
the end result, which is
Yep.
that baby saying, I'm ready. And
Yep.
sometimes it cannot be exactly when you want it. So
Yep.
the walking, because my mother always, well, she used to tell me that, I stayed in for like 10 months. I did not want
Take your sweet time.
I want to come out, you know. But I was just thinking about that, how we could think, how if people could kind of go back internally and think about what they were going through at that time, the strength, the resilience, all of the different things that they had to experience, patience. And I mean, that's a lot. And if you could go back to those times and whenever you're dealing with a situation, that could possibly give you some perspective on like being patient when you have challenges come up and saying, hey, it's not the end of the world. This is the process. It makes me think of a saying that I used to say, you just have to trust the process. You have to go through the process. You can't rush certain things. So
Birth is
building a
absolutely one of
building a
those things.
business and anything else, like how much of that are you teaching women as you're going through this process with them?
That is 99.9999% of of how I approach my doula work. And I say that not flippantly, but it really is just different phases of trusting the process.
Mm,
As you're going through pregnancy, ever that happened, for some women, that journey was super easy. They were fertile during their time of the months. They got with their partner and did the baby dance and they made a baby. And that's how it happened. Some women did that cycle for years and years and years and years and years and years before it actually worked.
mm,
Some women, that didn't work for them at all, and they had to get some medical help to make that happen. Or they had of a surrogate angel who helped make that possible for them. There's so many different journeys that people have to get to that point where you got to trust the process. Conception in itself is a miracle. It's a miracle that it even happens. All of the things that have to happen at exactly the right time to create that little life is trusting the process. The process of going through pregnancy and growing that baby, growing yourself, because as you're growing, your baby is growing, you're also becoming a mother, becoming a parent. Trust the process. That process looks easy for some people. You hear the women that have like easy pregnancy. I was never sick. I have that glow all the time. They look like they're all belly. They just look like a ray of sunshine. Who knows what their internal struggles are, the fears or concerns or whatever that they might have going on internally, where they got to trust the process too. And then there are the women and other birthing people that have really hard pregnancies. They're sick the whole time. They're in pain. Everything
mm.
hurts. They're dealing with emotional stuff. They have maybe relationship things that are going on while they're growing this new life, where they've got to trust the process. They've got to trust that this is leading to something amazing, which is being able to welcome their little human into the world. And then we get to birth. That's a whole other level of trust in the process, because you are not in control of that.
Mm,
Is the thing. You are not in control. This is a process that is going to happen. And that's regardless of how you birth. If you have your baby vaginally, at home, in your bathtub, with a midwife, or with no one, or if you're at a birth center, or if you're in a hospital, doing it in a hospital bed with nurses and all other, healthcare workers that are helping guide you through that process. Hopefully with your doula in all those scenarios, or if you're welcoming your baby via cesarean birth. It's all trusting the process. You're not in control. What has to happen is what will be.
right.
So being able to give yourself over to that, find
Mm.
whatever way you need to give yourself over to that, to open and be receptive of what has to be is what will be. And then that's just the beginning. And now you're a parent. And now you're a parent.
So how do you see yourself as far as a leader, and
Mm,
what are you going to do? You said that your work is starting to pick up, it's starting to be
mhm,
busy, the word of
mm,
mouth is getting out. How do
mhm,
you see yourself? In what way can you or do you see yourself delegating some of the responsibilities of
mhm,
your business over to someone else, or what's the next growth phase for you with your
mhm.
business?
Yeah, that's a great question. You sound like my husband right now because he's asking me all these same questions. Entrepreneur mindset that he does have. Um, Honestly, and again, these are lessons that I was fortunate to also learn in my last career, of how to delegate, how that you can't possibly own every single thing if you actually want to be successful and to grow and be able to scale. At some point, you have to learn how to delegate, how to automate where you can,
Right.
delegate where you need to. So I am adding in more automation, using more. It's one thing that being in tech helped me with. I'm very comfortable with working with
That's good.
technology
That's
in
good.
my practice. So like finding ways to let technology work for me and work smarter, not harder. But I'm getting to a point where I will probably start thinking about like doula partnership, at least like working with one other doula to handle the bandwidth, but without sacrificing the experience. I
Right.
really pride myself on being able to offer a really, really hands-on experience with each of my clients. I want them to feel held. I want them to feel nurtured. That's not just a tagline or a word that I use that's pretty marketing. That truly is how I approach my work. Like, I want you to feel like the arms of one of your potential mothers is holding you throughout this
Mhm.
process. So finding someone that's aligned with that way of working is really important to me. So until I get to that point, it's delegating, it's having boundaries around when I'm available, being fiercely protective of my family time,
Absolutely.
which requires a lot of organization. Like, I need to be able to say during this time I'm not available so that clients aren't trying to book me for stuff
Right.
during the hours I'm not available. So it does require a lot of organization and administrative tasks, but just being protective of that,
Yeah.
like if I can't do it, declining the work where I need to, referring out where it makes sense. But just, yeah, just really trying to protect my mode of working. And that's more important to me than like hyper growth. So just kind of taking it as it comes, being open to the blessings and all the stuff, but also like being strong about my boundaries and all that too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Very important. All
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right. So you have shared a lot about the work that you do. I love that, you have all these experiences with tech and how you're bringing it into
Mhm.
your doula work. You're like, okay, don't always know how the skills that you garner from one will transfer
Exactly.
over to the other. So that's awesome that you're
Absolutely.
able to integrate those things. So
Absolutely.
I know that you said, like me, you love being on the water. I want to go into
Yes.
this next segment of the podcast.
Yeah.
When would you say that you are in your flow state? Where you might be working hard, but all the skills and everything that you worked on to get to this point, and everything just feels easy and it's just
Yeah.
flowing.
Yeah. Honestly, it may sound cliche, but it's when I'm fully present. And
Mm,
for me, that means I'm showing up completely as Carmen as I need to be in that space. With doula work, it's very situational. Yes, I
mm,
have a lot of training. I have multiple certifications. I have a lot of, hands-on experience and all the things. A lot of tools in my doula toolkit, but no two clients are the same.
mm,
Obviously, no two pregnancies are the same. No two postpartum experiences are the same. So being able to have my tools and have all these things I can pull from, but being able to show up in a moment as what is needed for that space, what that mom needs from me at that time in that scenario, and me just being confident that I'm prepared. Like, I've done the
mm,
work to be able to show up and perform as is needed. Just being myself, just being me, not trying to, portray myself as anything other than me, and all the expertise I have, and just a genuine desire to help and care for people. I grew up with that. My grandmother who raised me was extremely nurturing, so I kind of feel like sometimes I'm channeling her in my
okay.
all the things that she's taught me. Even just today, I'm working with a postpartum client right now who I was able to like prepare her a meal uh with a lot of things that she needs as she's healing, and she's got her mom and a whole lot of people there, but they weren't as familiar with working with this specific protein. We were using organ meat, and I was like, yeah, let me, you got some onions and you got this, and I literally got in the kitchen and like just prepped her this super iron rich meal. And I literally felt like my granny was like sitting there with me at the stove, like, not too much seasoning, give that a taste before you plate that up. And I just that actually felt like a big flow moment. Like, I was just in the
Mm,
moment. It's super spontaneous. I didn't go there knowing I was gonna cook for her, but that was what she needed at the time. That was what her family needed to support her. And I was able to put my amateur chef skills on show. Yeah. Yeah. But I just am able to bring all the awesomeness that is me, and
I
show
love
up
that.
how I need to.
I love that. So our last segment is passing the torch.
Okay.
Now you have two daughters.
Yeah.
How would you say that the work that you do and the women that you were helping to lead into motherhood, what would you say to the next generation about staying active, how it can help them whether they are becoming a mother during pregnancy, or just how the lessons that they learned as being active or being an athlete can help them in life in general?
Definitely. I think one of the things that has been a foundation for me with my daughters is me demonstrating to them me pouring into myself
Mm,
so that I can pour into others. They see how outgoing I am, not just for them, but for other people. They're old enough now that they actually get that, and we have conversations about it all the time. They're both very giving and loving little people, and I like to think it's partially due to my example, but I make a really big point of also showing them how I take care of myself, how I pour into myself. They know that mommy's going to get her workout in every day regardless of what's going on. So if I can't go to the
good.
gym in the morning, you're going to see me in the room doing my functional workouts, and they might come and do it with me cuz like that's just
Mm-hmm.
their normal now. Their normal is that.
Right.
Their normal are my monthly self-care days where like I'm off. I'm not mommy today. Today daddy's on duty and mommy's going to be out doing whatever she needs to do. They know, oh,
Okay. I love
mommy's
it.
got her mommy day, and then they see me how much I give into my doula work and working with my clients. I'm always gushing about the babies and all the things, and like, oh, you got another, I'm sorry mommy can't have lunch with you today. I know you want to, but I have to go see my doula client. And them, okay, I understand, because they get that the work I'm doing is really, really important for these women. And it's showing them that like
I love that.
we have to be a little selfish. We have to pour into ourselves in order to show up and be our best selves for other people.
I absolutely love that because so many times, Black women in particular, we say we put ourselves on the back burner. We put everything into our children. And then when they are old enough to take care of themselves, then we say, okay, now it's time for me to focus on me. I love that. I
Not at
absolutely
all.
love that. That is so
Yeah,
important. That is a
absolutely.
wonderful lesson for them to learn. And we talk about that in other areas where, you're on the airplane and they say, if we
Hmm.
lose cabin pressure,
Put
put
your
the
mask on
mask on
first.
yourself
Yep,
first before you assist the person that's dependent upon you. So,
yep,
yes, taking care of yourself. So many times in so many careers and things, we are like, okay, well, why does the beautician's hair look bad?
yes,
Why does this
yes,
person do nails, but your nails look beat up?
yes,
So I
yep,
love that you are showing your daughters you got to take care of yourself first. That is
yep,
beautiful. That is a
yep,
beautiful lesson for them to learn.
yep. Absolutely,
Absolutely.
yep.
Absolutely. Well, Miss Carmen, it has truly, truly been my pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you again for
Thank
being on the Elevated Flow podcast. Now, before we leave, can you please tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to follow the work that you're doing or maybe hire you as a doula?
Absolutely. So my website, www.mama-nurture.com, is going to be the best way to get in contact with me. You can see all about my work, what I do, the services I offer, and then if you're interested, set up a quick little consultation and learn more about what you're looking for in a doula and how I might best serve you. I am on social media, but that's currently undergoing a revamp again with the leveling up part. So I'll be sharing out that information soon. But for now, mama-nurture.com is the best way to get in touch with me.
Awesome, awesome. And since the audience, a lot of them are older than 40, they'll probably be calling you for their daughter or granddaughter. But hey, regardless, just finding
Absolutely.
out more information. I love it. Okay.
Definitely.
Well, that's it for the Elevated Flow podcast. This is Coach Flo signing off. Remember to find your zone and elevate your flow.
One,
Peace.
two,